royal houses fall into the curse of the spare? That's what I found myself wondering after we got a new announcement about how King Charles is seeing the members of the royal household. He has delineated them into basically 4 groups: senior royals, working royals, non-working royals, and others. And who is in the other category? Why, it's officially the royal spares. Prince Harry, his wife Meghan Markle, and Prince Andrew. And even within that subset, Andrew still gets better treatment than Harry and Meghan. And it got me wondering and thinking, how do other royal houses utilize their spares, and what are the other pitfalls we've seen within other royal families? Because this is a very real problem that goes back centuries. What do you do with a royal spare? Because Harry and Meghan have shown how disastrously a spare can behave and how damaging they can be to the overall brand of the monarchy. Well, I think time since the Oprah Winfrey interview and Mexit has put the royal family in a better spot. Initially, after some of these interviews and everything came out, the royal family was very much damaged by what Harry and Meghan were saying. But as time goes on, obviously, minds change, but Harry and Meghan are not the only disastrous spares. We have Prince Andrew, obviously, and we have some from other royal households as well, including Infanta Cristina, Princess Märtha Louise, and we have a couple of others that we'll go over today, including one royal that was even put under house arrest for angering his big brother. So guys, we are going to go into these royal spare conundrums today, in addition to talking a bit about how Charles is continuing to deal with the problem of Harry and Meghan and Prince Andrew. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network, my name is Brittany and I provide compelling royal commentary about the latest news, sometimes a little bit of the drama going on behind the scenes. I also have a newsletter, a fashion channel, and I also have a membership. So if you're interested in becoming a member, you have a wonderful opportunity to see some of the behind the scenes things. I'm going to be sharing more pictures of my trip here because I was in Europe last month going to a couple of royal events, just doing some tours like going to the coronation exhibit and all these sorts of things. So I can't wait to share more with you guys on there and more with you guys on this channel as well. And I do have some exciting news. So yesterday I was working on a video for my fashion channel, Royal Fashion News, and I was looking at the tiaras at the recent Sweden Golden Jubilee. And as I was watching through that video, all I could see was the glitter, glitter, glitter of the diamonds. There is nothing like the glitter of tiaras. It really is quite a cool thing to behold. That's why even now I'm starting to try to grab more videos so you can just see these majestic pieces in person, because the Brits, I hate to say it, they're a little stingy when it comes to the videos of tiaras. We don't get these great up close shots that we do in other families. And I do actually have a partnership now. I'm so excited because you might notice I'm glittering a little bit more today. So I partnered with Ana Lucia Diamonds, who loves the royals. And so I got a couple of pieces and I can't wait to share them with you guys. I got this ring that I've been putting on and wearing. It's been glittering. It's so exciting. And I got these awesome little stud earrings, which kind of look like giant solitaire studs, but they're really a couple of diamonds. These are all lab created diamonds. And I also have a necklace as well. And I have another pair of earrings I'll be showing to you guys. So these are just great fun. I've been having such fun wearing them. I got them yesterday, so I've been wearing them around. Especially, I was super excited about the ring, really loving the ring, and these earrings. Oh my gosh, guys, they are amazing. And they just glitter. It makes me excited because I didn't really have anything that glittered when I wore it. I mean, I had fake stuff, but the fake stuff's not as cool as the actual thing, even though yes, these are lab created diamonds. So if you guys are interested in checking out their website, because hopefully at one point maybe we might have something cool going forwards. We'll also have a giveaway coming up as well with one of the pieces of jewelry. So if you guys are interested, there is a link down below and there is a code. So if you want to use that code, it would be awesome. You save 20%. And these particular earrings are on sale, so you can save an additional 20%, because I tried the code just to make sure, because I really liked these and I saw the necklace and I was like, oh, do I want the necklace too? I don't know. So guys, anyways, if you are interested in that, again, link for everything will be down below. I'm super excited about this going forwards, and very, very exciting because so much of royalty seems to be about the glitter of diamonds. That's part of what drew me to royals. Actually, I had a book in the library I would go to. It's called The Queen's Diamonds. I actually bought it. I don't have it here. It's in my other room, I think. But it would just go through all the Queen's, well, not all of them because there's so many, but a decent amount of the Queen's jewels and gave a history. So it was just super exciting to have some of my own things that glitter. So anyways, guys, again, if you're interested, link down below. And before we get to talking about the curse of the spare, we do have a couple of other royal engagements to talk about, especially with Catherine and William. Catherine and William traveled to Cardiff, which is in Wales, to commemorate the start of Black History Month in the United Kingdom. Yes, if you will remember correctly, Meghan Markle did not know Black History Month in the United Kingdom was in October because, of course, she's always thinking America and Black History Month is in February. Just saying that. So they were over in Cardiff and they met some people who were part of the Windrush generation. And so they were bringing history to life at Fitzalan High School in Wales. Catherine was also talking a little bit about George's schooling. So go ahead and take a listen here.
This is the beginning. Being tested. Yeah, keep getting tested all the time. When it gets to A levels, you feel like you're on it. It just gets harder.
And then Catherine also had an additional engagement today. She went to a community center in Bracknell and she visited the Vis Razom Community Hub where refugees from the Ukrainian crisis could come together because Visi Razom means all together in Ukrainian. And Catherine is continuing her venture with pants. Since she has returned from break from her royal duties, she has not worn a single dress. Now guys, I am a dress freak. I love dresses. So to me, a little bit of a bummer. I was like so excited to see her include more pantsuits, but I was like, I miss dresses. I do. But today actually we got to see the first time Catherine has ever worn this particular style of outfit, which was pants, a button-up shirt, and a sweater vest. This is the first time ever we've seen this from Catherine, which is super exciting that she's still evolving her style at this point. And then of course we have Crazy Sussex stands saying, well, she saw Meghan in sweater vests at the Invictus Games and she's just copying Meghan. I'm like, those outfits have literally nothing in common between the two. Meghan was wearing those sweater vests without anything underneath, and Catherine actually had a button-up blouse underneath. So very different senses of style. Meghan had no style in those outfits. Just saying that. I have a whole video actually dissecting Meghan's Invictus fashion game. So if you guys want more about that, I'll try to remember to link it up above here. And we also have Queen Maxima of the Netherlands. She was giving away the Orange Foundation Awards, which was called Apples to Orange. So if you don't know, that's funny and it's a clever play on words. Why? Because the Netherlands is a kingdom of orange. And I'm sure they pronounce it differently, but I'm just going to say orange because they do wear orange. So anytime you go to sporting events where the Dutch are there, they're always in orange, which is weird because their flag colors are red, white, and blue like basically every other country on the planet. So it's just so exciting to see that they have this just connection, continued connection with the Kingdom of Orange and that they still wear those colors. I just find that to be great, great fun. We also had Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden. She went to Uslop. It's up a bit north of Stockholm, and she went there for a meeting of the Swedish church. And I have to say she looks fabulous in this outfit. Don't always like Victoria's day-to-day wear, but I really, really like this one. So it's super exciting to see her out and about. Okay, guys, let's discuss the royal spares. But first, let me share with you a bit. This was just a very, very short bit from the Daily Mail, but I thought it was really, really interesting. So let me read it to you. It says, 16 weeks after his coronation, King Charles has radically reset his late mother's concept of the family firm, now categorizing them, according to a source, as senior royals, working royals, non-working royals, and others. The others are apparently Andrew, Harry, and Meghan, with Andrew getting preferential treatment over the Sussexes. He was allowed to join Edward at the one-year memorial service for the late Queen at St. George's Chapel in Windsor, while Harry, on the same day, struggled to get permission to pay his respects at her tomb there. So looking at that whole situation, I had been thinking about, how do we do a video on royal spares? And this is not all-encompassing by any means, but I just thought it would be interesting to unpack essentially the problem of the spare. What do you do with the spares? Because there's some families where the spares have been wildly successful within the royal family or in their own jobs. And then there's others where it's like, oh my good gracious. Yeah, I mean, we have circuses involved, shamans, we have house arrest, like I said in the intro, lots of other things to unpack here. And I want to be clear here as well, because I think there are troubles and pressures that come with being the spare, but different struggles and pressures with being the heir. Nothing is really easy or black and white. They all have their own individual struggles, but it's how people deal with them, and perhaps I think some of it is parenting involved as well, which really I think makes a difference in this situation. Just to give an example of I think very productive spares within the royal fold is in Sweden with Prince Carl Philip and his wife, Princess Sophia, and we have Princess Madeline and her husband, Christopher O'Neill. I know I've mentioned this before, but Madeline lives in the United States here in Florida. At some point, she had actually been engaged to a Swede, and it was discovered that he had cheated on her, so they had been engaged, so they called off their engagement, and she fled to the United States and lived in New York City for a while, and that's where she met her now husband. And so because of that, they have a more nomadic lifestyle. They lived in London, they lived in Sweden, they've lived in Florida, they've lived in New York, and now they're going to go back and they're going to live in Sweden full time. But that's partly because the way the Constitution is written in Sweden, in order for her children to retain their titles and place in the line of succession, they need to be raised and educated in Sweden. King Charles, take note on that, please. And Christopher O'Neill decided not to have a title. And so they go, and yes, they do engagements in Sweden from time to time, especially big events. But Madeline is no longer really a working member of the royal family. She supports her mother and her charity. That's mostly where she works. It's called Childhood. And she does get some of her costs covered if she comes to Sweden to do an official engagement. But other than that, she's essentially on her own. And I think she enjoys it. I think she enjoys that her family has a separation from Sweden, because although we don't hear about the Swedes much, there is a lot of gossip within the Swedish tabloids about the families. And if I remember, I don't think I took a picture. I might have taken a picture of it somewhere. I actually got a couple of Swedish publications that talked about the royals. And so there is a pressure within that country. So Madeline escaped that. And we also have Prince Carl Philip. But I do think his situation is a little bit unique because yes, he is the spare, but he was actually technically born crown prince. But the Swedish government had changed the constitution, and when he was about 6 months old, the title went to his older sister, Crown Princess Victoria. And I know I've talked about this before, and some people were like, well, he didn't really mean this. He's fine with her being the crown princess. He's excited. He's so happy. But King Carl Gustaf, I think in his heart of hearts, really wanted his son to be king after him. Not that he doesn't love his daughter, Crown Princess Victoria, not that she's not doing a fantastic job, which she is, but Carl Philip does seem to get preferential treatment within the family in a lot of ways. He's the only boy, and I thought it was very interesting when I was in Sweden for the King's Golden Jubilee that it was the King, Victoria, and Carl Philip who came out on the balcony in kind of the last little bit first. And why is that interesting? Well, because Carl Gustaf is not the spare to Victoria, really. Victoria's spare, if you could call her, or direct heir, Princess Estelle, is 11 now, I think. And so I think it would have been more appropriate for Princess Estelle to come out with her mother and her grandfather rather than Prince Carl Philip. And because of Carl Philip's, I think, somewhat preferential treatment in Sweden, we also have that he got to marry very quickly, a woman you could say maybe could have raised a bit of an alarm. And that was Princess Sophia. She had participated in reality TV shows. She had done risque modeling, you could say, posing with a snake, most famously. And so she was definitely, you could say, a huge question mark around her. I think she's actually been a fantastic addition to Sweden, but it was very easy for Carl Philip to marry her, and it took a long time for Victoria to finally get permission to marry her now husband, Prince Daniel, because they dated about 10 years before they finally got married, and Carl Philip and Princess Sophia was a much shorter time frame. Now, you could say it was just how their relationships dynamic worked and everything like that, but I think Carl Philip, because he's somewhat the preferred son for the king, I think he gets some preferential treatment, so he is not quite maybe perhaps as competitive with his sister. And I think honestly he's probably a genuinely good guy, and he enjoys being the spare because he still gets a lot of the perks, perhaps you could say, of being the heir. So it's just a very interesting dynamic to consider. Another one I want to talk about real quick, and I'll be very brief here because she's still very young, But we have had at least one story where I was like, ooh, one or two stories where I'm like, okay, she could potentially be somebody who's maybe perhaps a bit of a spare to watch. And this is Princess Alexia of the Netherlands. So the particular instance I'm thinking of is that she was photographed and it was posted on Instagram. And I've seen the picture and I think somehow it got taken down or whatever because I followed the link to the article and the picture was no longer there. The picture on her and her friends when they were in high school going to a lingerie party. They were at boarding school in Wales, and so they were going to this party apparently posing up a storm. And obviously her sister didn't do that. We also had several princesses who went to that school. All of them were heirs, so situation could have been different. We had Princess Elizabeth of Belgium and Princess Leonor of Spain, who was actually in the same class as Alexia. And so that was rather interesting. There was also a story that somehow Alexia made some sort of crude remark during a photo call or something. And so it'll be interesting to see because she seems to be a little bit more sort of vivacious and perhaps could be a little bit more drama to her story. But she just turned 18. She is very young, but I thought she would be an interesting spare to watch for future. How do royals, especially with the shadow of Harry and Meghan hanging over the rest of Europe, how do royals move forward? Because that situation with Harry and Meghan, yes, Harry and Meghan's situation is not as bad as a couple that we'll get to, but it's been so loud. It's been so nasty. It's been so public. I'm sure all the royal families are just praying to goodness that they can avoid that same situation. Next spare we'll get to, and I will say that when it comes to Princess Stephanie of Monaco, I understand that she was actually in the car with her mother when the car accident occurred and Grace Kelly sadly passed away. Grace Kelly most likely had a stroke and was behind the wheel and went off the side of the road. Stephanie was in the car. She was actually injured and could not attend her own mother's funeral. So I understand that there's very much a, I'm sure, psychological scar for Stephanie. Stephanie hasn't been as much, you could say, problematic as some, but she's led a very interesting life. So the father of her first two children was actually her bodyguard. And so they had these two kids, and then they actually married briefly for about a year before they divorced, which did legitimize her two children. She also had another daughter named Camille, and at the time she did not put the father's name on the birth certificate. Can you imagine that? Because, and again, in royal circles, the dynastic implications are so large that that's something that's rather shocking. And I should have said in Monaco because it's male preference. So Prince Albert is the ruler of Monaco. He is the middle child. Princess Caroline is older. Princess Stephanie was the youngest child. And then Stephanie, the trajectory of her, at least her personal life, gets rather strange because at some point she ran off with an elephant trainer and lived in an actual circus. She lived in a circus caravan. That is not a joke. That is actually what happened. And then later she married briefly for about a year an acrobat. And so Monaco is a bit of a different country and a different beast in a lot of ways because you do have very much this laissez-faire, more glamorous and I think indulgent sense of Monaco because of that it's a principality, it's small, there's a lot of money, a lot of glamour, a lot of glitz. You could say a lot of drama too, but Princess Stephanie definitely stands out given her personal life. I do feel very sorry for her because I think a lot of that does come from the psychological wound of her mother's passing very suddenly, but I can't imagine how that would go over in a place like the UK, Spain, Belgium. That would have been very, very different. But it is fascinating to see how much being the spare sort of impacts and allows for definitely more freedom than some people experience within the royal fold. And as you'll notice on this list, we get to progressively the most severe cases of the spare anxiety, you could call it. Next, we have Princess Märtha Louise of Norway, who believes she is clairvoyant and speaks to angels. Yeah. So when it comes to Norway, at the time when Märtha Louise was born, she was actually the firstborn child of the king and queen. But because of male preference, it was actually her younger brother who became the crown Princess Haakon. And this was actually changed when Prince Haakon had his firstborn child, which was Princess Ingrid Alexander. She will actually become the future queen, and her younger brother Magnus will not. And so Princess Märtha Louise, though, she's caused a lot of controversy. Let's just say that. And this was before she got together with her fiance. who is a shaman. Many people think he's sort of a con man. So let's go first into, so Princess Märtha Louise actually lost her styling of Her Royal Highness in 2002. And she was criticized at the time, before and after, for using her title for commercial endeavors. This is a problem we sort of have with the spares, is how do you, especially if you don't have a working royal, Norway is a very small country, so they only really need a handful of royals. And so it's not a surprise that Märtha Louise didn't really have a role, but it's what does she do after that? So she's claimed to be clairvoyant, and her clairvoyancy and her beliefs are not just relegated and limited to just, let's say, herself. No, there are broader implications to this. She actually holds a seminar. She has some sort of class to help you speak to angels. And this included a connection with Lisa Williams, who is some sort of clairvoyant person. So let me read you a bit of this quote that I found about this sort of school of angel talk that Märtha Louise has founded. Her organization is called Soul Spring, and this is what it says. We in Soul Spring do not communicate with dead souls in our work. And here is where our work is separate from Lisa's. To be completely honest, we don't see the point of contacting the dead. They passed over to the other side for a reason and should be allowed to stay there. No one representing the royal family commented. What do you say? I think this was actually from Märtha Louise or Soul Search or whatever, because Lisa talks to dead people. Apparently Soul Search, they talk to angels because they're not pulling people over from the other side, guys. Because, you know, they went over to heaven for a reason, and if they passed on and they're dead, like, we don't need to call them. But it's just the idea that you're trying to contact angels. This is a little wonky. Just a little wonky. And then you combine this with her relationship with Dirk Verrett, who claims, by the way, to be half Norwegian. Because his mother was apparently part Norwegian and West Indian. I honestly really don't believe that. I just really don't. Because this is part of the way she sort of tried to bring him into the fold, was saying, well, he's part Norwegian. Because they have this big thing where she's like, he's never been to Norway and he's part Norwegian. So we're going to take him to Norway because I'm a Norwegian princess. And they had a event called The Princess and the Shaman, where people could come and listen to them and get a workshop from them. So here's what part of it says. It says, the talk, join us in this in-depth talk created by Princess Märtha Louise and Shaman Direct that takes you on a self-discovery into wisdoms to reveal how your divine self activated and how you can utilize your gift to change the world. You may be triggered to widen your horizons on life, tapping into your true powers through mediations and shamanic exercises. Workshop section. It goes to say they will talk about life, how to increase your awareness and guide you back to what is truest about you. Through deep and unfolding mediation, intimate shamanic work, a talk on the way to use these tools to expand your consciousness, we will take a magic ride to unfolding the perfection under whatever we believe is true. And there's some great pictures I found. And also Shaman Direct has some sort of connection with Gwyneth Paltrow from Goop. He was also on The Doctors. Why? I don't know, because this guy apparently, he wrote a book, and I wrote it down. Let me see what it says. Called Spirit Hacking, which claims that children who get cancer got cancer because they were unhappy. Yeah, I know somebody who had a baby with cancer. A baby, less than a year old, with cancer. A baby's happiness does not determine whether or not they have cancer, because I'm sure very happy babies have gotten cancer and very happy babies have not gotten cancer. That is just lunacy. It is. But you get kind of the problematic elements that Norway was dealing with here. We also had that she wrote some sort of book with a friend called Sensitive Born, all about the sensitivity. And it's not just like that people are sensitive. I think, and I didn't read this for sure, but I'm sure this was a huge part of it, that sensitive means that they're sensitive, like telepathy, clairvoyancy. They just got this sensitivity. They can talk to angels and ghosts or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, so she wrote part of that, and she went on tours about this. And again, just the shaman princessing, the princess and the shaman, just bad. But Dirk Verrett, I hate to say it, also doesn't seem to be a great guy. To go into Veret's past a bit, he was also in a relationship with another man for a period of years. And after that relationship ended, the man said that Veret was manipulative, violent, and dangerous, quote unquote. And then we also have another quote, and this is from an assistant who worked with him. And she said that she lived with Veret for 6 years, and she said, Veret controlled my life. It was as if he became jealous of anything that stole his attention. I was not allowed to start a serious romantic relationship or raise my son. It was all about Veret. And Veret's mother even called him ingratiating, manipulative, and dangerous, and prone to lying. She has no contact with him. And I'd love to know too if she confirmed whether or not he's actually Norwegian, because that just seems like a bit of a spiel done for like shock value or something. But it's just very, very fascinating. And if she's part West Indian, part Norwegian, then he would be a quarter Norwegian, not half Norwegian. Just saying. But again, Joe, because of this problematic element, Princess Märtha Louise basically had to give up the minimal number of working royal engagements that she had. And she and her fiance did this whole video about it. So go ahead and take a listen to a little bit of this here.
First of all, I would like to emphasize that there has been no discord within the royal family through this process. I would also like to clarify the fact that when in the future we do get married, like my uncles Erling Lorentzen, Johan Martin Ferner, and my late husband Ari Ben, Durek will not receive a title.
So it'll be interesting to know what Veret actually thinks about this, because they have announced that in August 2024 they will be getting married in Norway. But it just seems like he's very much a problematic guy, and the Norwegian people, between the cancer stuff with him, the shamanic stuff, her thinking she's clairvoyant, the angel stuff, and I think she has some sort of therapy too that relies on more spiritualism and stuff like that. It was just a little too much for the Norwegian people. And she was basically forced to step back if she wanted to continue her relationship with him, which I think is very sad. She does have 3 young daughters, and to add to the tragedy of the situation, her former husband, who she divorced shortly before getting into a relationship with him, was about a year, I think, between them. He actually ended up committing suicide. And so her daughters have lost their father, and now she's strapping them with this shamanic stepfather guy. Feel sorry for those girls. Just saying that right now. And the Norwegian royals, even if they liked Veret, and I think they're more gracious than the vast majority of other royal families, they're like, you don't really have any good answers to anybody's questions, so we're going to have to wrap this up a bit. So the challenges facing Märtha Louise, though, are not quite as bad as another royal spare here, and we're going to talk about Infanta Cristina of Spain. Yes, the woman who was actually on trial for tax evasion. And although she was acquitted, this was quite the scandal, because you got to remember, royals get a lot of grace and favors from the government. They get to live in government-funded housing. They get government-funded trips. They get all sorts of these things. And granted, it's not quite as black and white as that, but you understand there's a lot you get as a royal, and in exchange, you're asked to be very judicious with who you're spending time with, how you're spending your money. Infanta Cristina and her husband, not so much. So this first started in 2012 when her husband was put under investigation for tax evasion and tax fraud and other charges, because he apparently had obtained millions in a case known as the news case. And so this case started, and because of her relationship with him, obviously he is her husband, Cristina was put up on charges as well. These included being money laundering and tax fraud. So this began in 2012. By 2013, she had been labeled a suspect, and she made her first court appearance in June 2014. And just for a bit of context, her father was also going through a series of scandals, and in 2014, her father abdicated his throne and gave it to her younger brother. And so this is all happening around this time, and although the news case and everything regarding Cristina's husband was part of that, obviously the Juan Carlos issues were consuming that as well. But there's obviously a lot of scandal going on in Spain at this time, which forced Cristina to be put under the microscope. She ended up being charged along with 15 others and her husband. And because of the scandal, she actually had to relinquish her dukedom to her brother. So that happened in 2015. And so just to give you an idea as well, this is including the Juan Carlos stuff, but between 1995 and 2013, when a lot of this scandal stuff started coming about. The approval of the Spanish monarchy dropped from 7.5 to 3.68 out of 10. So that is a huge drop. It's basically halved, in part because of Juan Carlos and Infanta Cristina. So she ended up going to trial and she had to testify in the court, although it was her own attorney who could question her regarding the tax evasion. Basically, she said, well, her husband managed the finances. She didn't know. She had no idea. He made big purchases on a company card and it was for personal use. So a lot of confusion there. And she didn't have to face the money laundering charges, but she did have to face the tax evasion charges. She was eventually acquitted. Her husband was not, though. And he was actually convicted and was initially stated to spend 6 years and 3 months in prison, which was decreased to 5 years and 10 months. He is now out of prison. So literally the King of Spain, his brother-in-law, has spent time in prison for tax evasion and fraud. That is a huge, huge issue. And when you look at the case of Prince Andrew, he definitely associated with some very scuzzy people, including Jeffrey Epstein. Very scuzzy business practices. You know, he was Air Miles Andy. He was traveling all over the world, perhaps maybe picking up bags of cash, essentially on the government's dime. So Andrew very much has a huge question surrounding him. But he's never been convicted of a crime. So he at least has that. But this situation was very damaging to the Spanish monarchy, which did not have enough latitude at the time to deal with these damages. And that it's still alive is basically by the skin of its teeth. Basically, the only working royals that we see anymore are King Philippe and Queen Letizia of Spain, in addition to their two daughters, Princess Eleanor and Infanta Sofia, in addition to Queen Sofia of Spain. The Spanish people love Sofia. They feel very sorry for her because she's like the long-suffering wife. And so we do see sometimes some of Infanta Elena, who is the oldest sister, but we don't see a lot of Infanta Cristina because she really can't have a role anymore. She also relocated her family to Switzerland. I'm not sure if they're still there, but she wanted to remove them from the situation because, yeah, this was bad. This was very, very bad. And then we have our worst case of spare. And this one is interesting because I think there's a lot of dynamics at play here. And this is Prince Hamza of Jordan. So this is the younger half-brother of King Abdullah of Jordan. Now, so for those of you who don't know, the way that Middle Eastern monarchies work is different because essentially they choose who is next in the line of succession. So when you look at, for example, Saudi Arabia, the role of king basically went through all the sons of the first king. Just to give you guys an idea, the initial king, he started his reign in like the 1940s, 1950s. We are still on his sons. We haven't even gotten to the grandsons yet, let alone the plethora of princes and princesses in Saudi Arabia. There are like thousands of them, thousands. And part of the reason is that most of them in Middle Eastern countries, many times they can have multiple wives. So we see this in Qatar, for example, the emeritus emir of Qatar. So he's the emir, but not really ruling anymore. He gave those privileges to his son. The emir of Qatar has 3 wives. He clearly prefers his second wife, who is very glamorous. She goes to all the foreign royal events, including most recently the marriage of Crown Prince Hussein of Jordan. And her son is the one who is the current emir of Qatar. And all of her other kids, I think, have higher ranking roles and everything. She obviously herself has much privileges compared to his other 2 wives. So she's very much treated favorably. And so when it came to the case of Jordan, while the former king did not have multiple wives, in terms of having multiple wives at the same time, he did have a couple of wives because he did divorce several. I think he was married like 4 times. And so one of his wives obviously birthed King Abdullah, and Queen Noor had Prince Hamza. And so because of that, there is this natural tension. So when Abdullah first became king, his crown prince was Hamza, not his son, because he hadn't had his son yet. And it took a while for them to transfer. So Hamza was very much perhaps in line for the throne. But Abdullah didn't like that too much and eventually stripped that of him and gave it to his son. That's not a surprise at all. But right now, Hamza is under house arrest for the reason of erratic behavior and aspirations. And here is a longer quote about the situation because I think there's a lot going on here. It says, "We will provide Hamza with all that he requires to live a comfortable life, but he will not have the space he once abused to offend the nation, its institution, and his family, nor to undermine Jordan's stability." Well, what Hamza was undermining was perhaps Abdullah's popularity. Hazmat is apparently very popular in the country. And so Abdullah is working to undermine that in a way by putting him under house arrest and claiming that he is problematic. And is that not like a middle-aged spare conundrum right there? It's crazy. But it also goes to show, I think, in a lot of ways, the tensions that exist between an heir and a spare. So now we look at Charles reconfiguring the family and labeling his spare problems as other. Charles needs to figure out what to do with his spare problems. Obviously, there's been reports now that Prince Andrew has been told, well, if he can cover the renovations to Royal Lodge, then he can stay there. Because Charles' problem with Andrew is that Andrew potentially could face a criminal charge of some sort, and he needs Andrew to sort of stay in the background and yet also not cause trouble. So he needs to keep Andrew happy. And if Andrew keeping Royal Lodge keeps him happy, then it somewhat makes sense, because you don't want another loose cannon like Prince Harry. And Prince Andrew is treated better than Harry simply because Andrew has kept his mouth shut. I'm sure he doesn't like everything that's happened. I'm sure he wishes sometimes, I wish I could be king. But Andrew, again, has the benefit, at least to the public eye and to his brother, of keeping his mouth shut. As long as he continues to do that, Andrew should be fine. Harry and Meghan are another problem because they just will not go away. They just will not go away, and they're constantly complaining about the royal roles. And I think most specifically is they're trying to be royals. They've left the royal life, demanded a half-in, half-out thing. When they were told no, they're like, okay, well, we'll still do what we were going to do, essentially. And we're still going to try to be royals without actually being royals. And that's a problem Charles needs to figure out how to deal with, because every time they use that royal title, that royal connection, they damage the monarchy's brand overall, because Harry and Meghan are not working members of the royal family. They don't represent the United Kingdom. So every time they attempt to, every time they're allowed to, they become a bigger and bigger problem that the royal family needs to deal with. Yes, the public support is on the monarchy's side, but if Harry and Meghan continue to be the loose cannons that they are, at some point, something might be damaged that can just never come back. I think to a certain extent, Harry's reputation will be forever damaged by his association with Meghan Markle. I think in a different situation with perhaps a different wife, he could have been not only a productive spare, but even if he left the royal family, he would have left in a productive and constructive way. He would have gone to Africa. Again, I've always said that the life that Chelsea Davy, his first girlfriend, has built for herself is something that I feel like would have very much appealed to Harry. She runs a jewelry business, and she also runs a travel business, both called Aya Travel, Aya Jewelry, and all focused on Africa. And so she's able to travel to Africa, be in Africa, which she loves, and I think Harry would have loved as well. And so I think Harry could have had a very different life in different circumstances, but he happened to choose the worst type of spouse possible, who scratched at his spare wound, because I think it is tough to think, just by mere happenstance, just because of whatever, I'm not the firstborn child. And so therefore, I don't get all these special privileges. I don't get these special moments. I don't get this excitement of being the future king or queen. And while I'm sure there's additional stress that comes with that, there is a lot of benefits too. And the spare has a very tightrope to walk between being a productive member of the family and yet at some points also pursuing their own agenda, which is fine when it's done in a healthy way. And we have a new generation of royal spares coming up. So it'll be interesting to see how these dynamics and how the families change in reaction to the Harry and Meghan situation. But guys, let me know what you think of these stories of troublesome, you could say, royal spares. I'd love to get your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.